So it's changing your perspective. Next slide, please. Yeah. We need to look at the world and from a different perspective. Some Christians, and I've met quite a few, are quite polarised, aren't they? They're entrenched in their opinions. They think they are 100% right, and if you don't agree with them, you are 100% wrong. And I think that seems to have got worse in the last few years. And I was once told by a friend of mine that I was entitled to my opinion, but I was wrong. She had the Holy Spirit inside her, so she was right. And therefore, I must be wrong. So it doesn't matter what the issue was, and it doesn't matter who was right or wrong in that context. She was unable to see from a different perspective. And if we think everyone has to change to come in line with us, you have to change to come in line with me, then it's me that needs some humility, and it's not a question of right and wrong. So as I said, I am a writer, and I've written these 3 novels. And it's taken me 9 years. For some of us here, our lives are judged in 3-year blocks. It's 3 years since Sweden, 6 years since India, 9 years since Ghana. And the person I was just telling you about then, I was in business with, and just before the Ghana conference, I came out of business with her. We had to unravel everything. And I was at a little bit of a crossroads. I didn't know where I was going to go, what I was going to do. And I came along to the seminar day, and Debbie was speaking, talking about our creativity. And it got me wondering where I was going to go. So just be careful about these seminar days. They can be dangerous. They can make you change direction and do silly things. So what God had for me next, I had no idea what was going to happen. And a few weeks later, I had an idea of writing a short story about Martha. And then I thought, well, Martha is mentioned 3 times in the Bible. It could be 3 short stories. So I started writing, and God gave me the first line. That's not happened for the other 2, and I struggled to get a first line for the others. But that first line stayed as the first line of Leaving Bethany. And it's a story of Martha in the Bible. And I thought I would finish at Pentecost. And then I thought, oh no, Pentecost is the start, not the end. So Pentecost is halfway through the first book. So if we could have the next slide, please. And I was thinking about reframing this narrative about Martha. So this is a painting of a 19th century Polish artist, Henryk Siemieradzki. I apologize for any Polish people if I've said his name wrong there. So who is in this painting, and who can you see? See Mary? Martha's in the background. Yeah. And Jesus is in the centre, and Mary is in the foreground. Poor Martha is out in the background. So could we have the next slide? Yep, keep going. One more. Here's Martha. So what does this say about Martha? What's her body language? She's upset, yeah. Holding her shoulder. She's what, sorry? She's feeling left out. She was in the corner, feeling left out. So in that main picture, who was the most important? Mary. So let's have the next, please. And there she is, Mary. So Mary is relaxed, isn't she? She's looking up adoringly at Jesus. Martha is looking down. Mary is quiet. She's contemplative. She's unobtrusive. And above all, silent. So have you ever been asked, are you a Mary or a Martha? Yeah, and it's the women nodding, because men don't get asked that question. Are you a woman? Are you a Mary or a Martha? It supposes that women are polarised. You're either busy, you're active, you're doing things, or you're quiet, you're contemplative, you're unobtrusive, you're silent. Not many silent people here, I know. But then, what does Jesus say about Martha? Can I have them underneath, please? Yep. Jesus says, Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about so many things, but few things are needed, or only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Now that lovely verse has been misread many times. And it's from passage in Luke. And it can lead to an unhelpful division between the doing and the being, between the active and the contemplative in Christian life, particularly for women. I mean, are you someone who's always in the kitchen at church events, washing up, thinking about Robin, washing up, getting all the drinks ready? You know, are you always that person? Or, well, if you are a Martha. Or are you the woman who always attends the prayer meetings, always takes notes during the sermon, writes your journal, writes helpful hints to people, sends text with Bible verses? Are you that kind of person? Well, you are a Mary. But does it have to be one or the other? And this is why I wanted to change that perspective, reframe the narrative, tell a different story. So can I have the next slide, please? Oh, go on, one more. Yep. This is a picture by, I don't know, because I have it out, and it's there, thank you. Jan van Meer van Delft in 1654. And this painting is about 300-400 years before the other one, but it shows a completely different story. So what can you notice about Martha this time? She's involved. She's at the back. She's at the back. At first I thought she was addressed, but it's a table. But she's there and she's looking at Jesus. And where's Jesus' attention? On Martha. Yeah. And he may be pointing to Mary, but his attention is definitely on Martha. And it shows a different relationship than the first painting. Martha is important in this painting. And if this incident of the first meeting of Martha and Mary and Jesus was all we had, we wouldn't have as much about Mary and Martha. And my book would be a very short book. But it is only the first scene. So let me go forward a bit. I don't want to give any spoilers to the story, but they have a brother called Lazarus. And something terrible happens to Lazarus. He's ill and he's died. I'm sorry to break that to you. And Jesus turns up 4 days later when Martha has written to him to ask Jesus, to plead with Jesus to come and heal her brother. She's heard or seen Jesus heal before, and he does not turn up. So can you imagine what she's feeling at this point? And she confronts Jesus again. She's done it before. I like this woman a lot. And Jesus isn't worried that Martha confronts him. He asks her if she believes. And her response shows the depth of her faith, her spirituality, and her wisdom. This is not a woman kept in the kitchen. And she says, can I have that? Yes, Lord. I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world. Now, I've been around Christian circles many years, and I've never heard this preached about. We hear about Peter's confession of faith. Martha says almost identical. Now, when I read this again, I thought, I'm sure that's not in the other Bible. So let me get my other Bible out. Oh, yeah, it's there. Let's check a different version. Maybe it's just this version. Oh, yes, it's in the other version as well. but we've kind of forgotten about it. When we talk about the healing of Lazarus, we kind of forget this, that Martha said that Jesus was the Messiah. And at the time when she was full of grief, at the time when she was angry, so she was angry with Jesus at this point, but she still said that he was the Messiah. So she didn't get this from being stuck in the kitchen, hearing snippets of Jesus' conversation. She was there at the feet of Jesus with Mary. So can I have the next slide? I went to a talk by these two women, Kate Bruce and Liz Shirley, and they were talking about preaching the women of the Bible. And of course, as you do, I bought us a copy and I got it signed. And Liz wrote, "Be open to reading stories afresh." And that's what I think I have been doing all these years, which I hadn't realised I had been doing. I was reading stories afresh. And they say in the book that often we might need to take off our rose-coloured glasses. One way of seeing things, the way of seeing things which says Martha is the doing person, Mary is the quiet contemplative person. We need to take off those rose-coloured glasses to tell a different story. And it can be painful. If we've always looked at something in one way, it can be painful, it can be disruptive, or it could even be dangerous to reframe the narrative and tell a different story from the one we normally hear. I was recently watching a TV history programme, which I like to watch, in Britain, and it was about the Reformation in Britain. And Lucy Worsley, who was the presenter, said that history is not just one voice. There are many voices competing for our attention. So rather than just tell one story of the Reformation, she told many different stories, many different voices. And we need to hear and attend to these voices, particularly women's voices which have been forgotten about. Or that we may not have heard before. Can I have the next slide? Tell you very, very quickly, because I know there's not much time, about some other women that I have been writing about. Changing the narrative, changing the story of the one most commonly used. As well as writing the novels, I do monthly blogs. And it's usually about one of the women in, particularly the New Testament, I've been concentrating on. And these are three women which I think have been misused in the church for, I was going to say 2,000 years, but probably since the Reformation. Before that, we often had a different opinion about these women. So one is Mary Magdalene. And if you ask anybody, what did Mary Magdalene do before she met Jesus? Was she a prostitute? No. No, she wasn't. It's very common in films and TV and books and Dan Brown and Jesus Christ Superstar and everything. But before the 7th century, Mary was revered as the apostle to the apostles. Woo! Give it up for Mary. You're Mary. So I've written a couple of blogs about Mary as well, describing this different perspective about her. And I have a fictitious Roman journalist who likes to go around the Mediterranean and interview these women. So we get they are telling the story. And that is Amelia Metella. She's my Roman journalist, so I tell the story in a creative way as well as in an information way. And the woman at the well, I mean, she really is misaligned, poor woman. And if I ask, what do you know about the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman that Jesus met? What do we know about her? She had many boyfriends. Not necessarily, says Lucy. She had 5 husbands, and the man she lived with was not her husband. And that's what we major on. We are told that she was an outcast. She went to the well at midday when there were no other women went to the well at midday. They all went in the morning. She was an outcast. Everybody thought she was a terrible woman. But that opinion has only come since the Reformation. And in the Eastern Church, she is revered. And she has a name which is 14, which means the illuminated one. And if she was ostracized by the village, why did she go back to tell the villagers she'd met the Messiah and they followed her? I mean, if she was an outcast, they would have said, on your bike, 14, if bikes were invented in those days. We're not listening to you. You are a bad woman. But Jesus doesn't concentrate on that. And it is the longest conversation of Jesus we have in the Gospels, and it's with this woman. And Jesus relates to her on a one-to-one level, and he discusses theology with her. So to reframe the story, I said it was the woman who just discussed theology with Jesus, or the woman Jesus discussed theology with. And he spoke to her on that level. And tradition says that she was later martyred by being thrown down a well. This was a woman who went on. She's not just the woman who had 4 husbands, or 5 husbands, I can't remember. And then the woman who anointed Jesus, again, one of these is probably Mary of Bethany, Martha's sister, but the other one that Luke records, we are often told that she was a sinful woman. And what did that mean if you were a sinful woman? She was sexually immoral. Yes, Lucy. She was. That's what we are told, because she let down her hair. And she walked into this room full of men. And they said, do you know this woman? She's a sinful woman. And Luke uses a word to describe her. And he uses a word which, well translated, is sinful. So she is a sinful woman. But that is the second time Luke has used that word in his gospel. And the first time he uses it, I do not recall ever being in a Bible study or a sermon where this person is accused of a sexual immorality or a sexual sin. Do you know who the first person was who was described in that way? It was Peter. Yes, it was Peter. So when Peter describes himself as a sexual, when Peter describes himself as a sinful man, no, we don't think that's sexual. But when the woman is described as sinful, we think she is sexual. So let's tell a different story. And these are not just theological matters, they're not just semantics. It's important, and it's important how we view people. It's important how we view women in the church today, and it's important how women get allowed to use the gifting in church today. So it's telling a different story. How long do I have then? Oh, I've been rushing. But no, it's okay.
You can take your time. Or
it's all right. I've only got one more slide. So I've got some questions. So here are some questions to help us reframe our narrative or change the perspective. Bono, who's often not quoted, Bono says culture is always upstream of politics, meaning culture is important, and that affects the politics rather than the other way. And we are called to look away from the obvious, to dig a bit deeper, to be archaeologists, to get to the root. This can be dangerous. Take off our rose-coloured glasses. We are to be archaeologists, to dig deep, to stop and think, what kind of a world do we want to live in? And what is God calling us into? And we hear a lot of the current culture wars that we often hear about. And it makes it obligatory to stand in one camp or another. You are either for me or you are against me. But culture transcends these differences, and it can tell a different narrative. And art and culture shows us what we have in common, doesn't it? It doesn't divide so much, it shows us what we have in common. And art is not always comfortable, as Andrew was saying about the shapes and being grounded. It's not always comfortable, and it's not an add-on. So these questions to take away and consider on any matter. It could be a social issue, it could be a group of people you are working with, maybe a group of people that don't often have a voice, who are not often heard, a racial group in your country, or a cultural group, age group, young people, older people. So is there anything or any people that God is calling you to shift your perspective about? And what narrative do you need to change, and what new narrative or story do you need to tell? Is there something different that you want to tell? And how can you use your dance, your art, your music, your writing, how can you use that to tell a different narrative? So, thank you.